Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is the Mundane Matt channel, and man, the discussion over gun control is one that is just it's crazy in my opinion, right? You just have the two extremes. There's no real centered ground. There's no moderate perspective on guns. I'm a liberal, left leaning, definitely, who is all fine with guns. I have no problem with guns. I fully support the Second Amendment, and I'm actually really thrilled to see that 3D printing is going to allow guns to start being a thing. I am. I think that's so cool that technology has brought us to that point. I understand that there are going to be certain issues that are going to arise from this, but at the same time, you can never really stop technology. And I would love to think that the type of people that are going to 3D print weaponry are going to do so with the highest moral and ethical standards. Now, I know deep down that's ultimately not going to be the case, and we're going to learn more about these type of weapons. At least the Liberator is the one I know for certain that's going to go up here pretty soon, maybe being used in a homicide. And I don't want that. I don't want anyone to die. But that's just kind of where we find ourselves. And that's just being the dark truth of it is technology is going to progress forward. People are going to use technology for negative. But when you run on hyperbolic ideals as a way to combat that, I think you kind of lose your argument, which is what brings me to Alyssa Milano here. Now, she claims that 3D printed guns is downloadable death, which it does sound like that's like an interesting episode for Law and Order SVU. Now, it says here that imagine this. A convicted domestic abuser next door tries to buy a gun. He's turned down because he fails his background check. When he gets home, he opens up his browser, and in a half an hour, he's printing out his own undetectable, fully functional plastic gun with no background check and no record of his purchase. On August 1st, it will be a reality in America unless we stop it. Now, this is, I believe, an op-ed from Alyssa Milano. I should have pointed that out. Sorry. Well, the thing is, Alyssa, it's not like you can just 3D print a gun and then that's it. There's a bit more to it than that. So I do feel that it's a bit hyperbolic to make the claim like downloadable death. She does have a point about people who would be able to get around background checks with this, but at the same time, you're not. It's. I don't think as big of an issue as she's going to make it out to be. It's not as. It is something worth discussing, obviously, but yeah. Now, she says, due to a settlement between the State Department and Defense Distributed, a Texas-based designer of 3D guns, felons, domestic abusers, terrorists, those agitated to mentally ill, or to own guns, and any other person able to legally purchase firearms will be able to print one at home. Depending on the printer, they can be untraceable and plastic, or they can be metal. People will be able to make anything from novelty guns to AR-15s, and we will never know until it's too late. Now, that is just fundamentally not true. There are certain people out there that have manufactured like 1911s through a 3D printer. You can find some of those videos here on YouTube. They are interesting. The fact that they were able to 3D print out and make a working version of a 1911 for the most part. I mean, that is something that is a reality. As for AR-15s, again, the Armalite 15 assault rifle, which is not assault rifle being AR, like, come on, I think that we should at least make sure that distinction is there. Is a very far off thing, and most people would not go and do that, right? Would not go and do that. I would argue most two-way gun owners in this country, two-way supporters, gun owners in this country would not. But there is an issue to be made here about the mentally ill. Now, that is a very valid argument to make. Unfortunately, she ties the argument into such further hyperbole that it becomes harder to separate the two. And I believe the two are separate. She says, it gets worse. This requires a legislative fix immediately, and the House Representatives session adjourned for August recess on Thursday. In other words, there won't be a fix this month. It's not hyperbole to say that this could mean the end of our ability to have meaningful gun violence prevention here in the United States. No, it is a bit hyperbolic. I do see where she's coming from, but at the same time, the CAD file for the Liberator has been out there in the wild for quite some time. Legal or illegal, people have been able to get their hands on if you know where to go look. And we haven't heard stories about 3D printed guns being used to commit mass murder yet. So at this point, it does kind of feel like she's making a mountain out of a molehill, but it is a molehill that could eventually happen down the road. Again, that is, I think it is completely fair to make that claim that these things could happen down the road. Would they happen now? I don't, right away, obviously not, but there's something to look out for, Nicholas Cruz is out there, James Holmes out there, those type of guys. They exist, but they have mental problems. And we need to focus our attention more on trying to find and work with them rather than focus on people 3D printing out something for a hobbyist routine, and I think that's the problem here. Now, she says okay, so there are those that will say 3D printing of guns is not a major issue, that it's unpractical or too expensive, but many people said the same thing about tablets, e-readers, cell phones, laptops, home printers, computers, and cars. And in 2013, for a printer that then cost less than $2,000, it is possible to make a plastic gun successfully that fired at least 9 shots. Yeah, and you're basically trying to say, like, someone out there is going to fork out the $2,000 to print out a gun that fires off 9 shots before it breaks due to the heat of the bullets and stuff, of the gunpowder, and whatever. See, again, we haven't heard a case like this. If there are actual cases, and there might be that I don't know about, I want to make that abundantly clear. But if there were cases like this that were going that route, I could understand her argument. But she's, again, trying to play up this what if versus what has. And unfortunately, the way it comes to our country in regards to that particular debate, it does boil down to that. It's the what if versus what has. Now, she says here, does anyone think that technology is worse or more expensive than it was 5 years ago? It's not. You can now buy a 3D printer for less than $100. You could buy a printer fully capable of producing this gun for less than $1,000. The gun itself costs just $25 in material to make in 2013. Imagine the damage one of these guns, even if it was only capable of firing 1 shot, could do aboard a plane, or in a government office, or in your child's classroom. Well, the thing is, the gun itself, you can assemble it from the 3D printer, but it still requires a firing pin, and I think like one or other piece of material that like you have to get your hands on. You know what I mean? So it's like, while they may not be able to regulate the CAD files that are going out there, you still actually have to go and get your hands on other materials in order to finalize the manufacturing of this 3D printed gun before it fires. Okay. So it's like, if they were to look at those items and then put those on some kind of watch list, you would be able to then see who was buying them in mass, or who was buying them, and then maybe what they're all about. So there are ways to get around this thing without infringing on what has already been settled. I think you could argue as a free speech issue, or even a Second Amendment issue, depending on they could argue that the gun itself, the creation, the CAD file, is art. I don't know what the argument that they use, but that's one that if I needed to pull one out of my ass, that's what I would say. She says, this is in part a larger problem of ghost guns. These guns are made from DIY kits, which have no serial number, require no background check, and are currently fully legal due to loopholes in our laws. An internet search on ghost guns tells us a terrifying tale. Headlines of gangs stocking up on these untraceable weapons, of states with strict gun laws like Massachusetts confiscating hundreds of these guns, of a tide of guns we don't know are out there and we don't know how to trace, which again is entirely true. There are issues with these type of ghost guns, but those aren't, necessarily the same as this. You can make a weapon out of anything. Right. And the UK right now, there's a joke about them trying to, require people to get permits in order to get butter knives because knife attacks are so prevalent in the country. And I know that's going to trigger some people from the UK that are going to comment on this video, and they're going to say, it's not the case. That's why I said I want to say it's a joke. Just want to put that out there. It's a joke. She says, and we're about to make it much worse. Gun violence prevention organizations, Brady Center to Prevent Gun Violence, Everytown for Gun Safety, and the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence filed a lawsuit to get an injunction to keep these downloadable guns from becoming legal. But on Friday, a judge denied the motion to halt the sale of these deadly weapons. Partnered with the Newtown Action Alliance and Fred Gutenberg of Orange Ribbons for Jamie, the No Rifle Association, my organization, is helping to build a coalition of state attorneys generals to also fight in court. We hope that we'll be able to keep us safe long enough to enact permanent legislative solution to this menace. The ghost guns are a larger menace than this is right now, Alyssa. The ghost guns. You haven't outlined a specific instance where this has been used in a negative fashion. For an argument like this to take hold, you need to have some kind of precedent to back it against. Ghost guns from DIY kits that are used by gang members is precedent for finding a way to stop ghost guns from being a thing, right? But here it's very difficult to equate the two. In general, I believe that it is. I don't think this would hold up in a court of law. I don't think that argument would hold up in a court. And I think that's why the judge denied the lawsuits. I think that's why he shut them down. But without the public electing a Congress with the backbone to stand up to the gun industry and drawing a line in the sand at guns on demand for everyone anytime is unlikely to happen. I'm going to be fighting this in the courts and in the voting booth, and I encourage everyone who cares about public safety to do the same. And I get it. I get where Alyssa's coming from. I get what she's trying to say here. I do understand that. But at the same time, I have to sit there as just another American and look at this from an objective viewpoint. In all the times we've had the debate over gun control, 3D printed guns has been a minor one. The situation involving the Liberator that's going to be able to go out is one that, yes, you can manufacture yourself, you can print yourself, but you still need other materials to make it fire. All right. And yes, technology is getting better to where down the road 3D printed assault rifles could in fact be a reality. And I don't think anyone's going to argue against that. Most of the people that use this, I'd argue a vast, overwhelming majority of people that would be using this technology are doing this for hobbyist purposes. Now, the problem here is gang violence in inner cities, which we know is an issue. 40 people, about 40 to 45 people a week are shot in Chicago every single week. Today's Monday. I've already seen a headline talking about the 40 people who were shot in Chicago over this weekend. That's an epidemic. That's a problem. Now, I could see this being an issue in that community. At the same time, you've already outlined what is the bigger issue, these ghost guns that are untraceable. So that should be your focus. That should be your focus. You're trying to put together this coalition for people to stop people from downloading and printing a firearm, or at least, that may or may not work depending on the materials that you use, and still requires other materials in order to complete the weapon itself. And I just feel like your energy would be better spent elsewhere rather than on this trying to argue a hyperbolic narrative versus an actual epidemic that is happening in Chicago with people who are being wounded every single weekend. I'm not saying shot and killed every week. I'm saying shot every week. So yes, there's a gun violence problem in Chicago. I would argue that instead of trying to put it on like Second Amendment, supporters, and in this case, ultimately Trump supporters, which is what your argument boils down to, you would be better served trying to take your activist organization and head into places like Chicago, into the inner city, and work with the local police in order to raise funds, to start programs, to find a way to get guns and drugs off the street there, to bring commerce and business back, to bring hope to that place, and then you will see an outward ripple effect. But this top-down approach that you're taking, where you're trying to target what I feel is like, not even like, it's maybe a symptom of a greater problem, but it is not the actual problem. And that's one of the reasons why I have to give you crap about this, because I feel like you're just running on the anti-Trump narrative. I mean, you never said Trump in there at all, which is fine. But at the same time, you have to realize that 3D printed guns are not just downloadable death. All right. There could be. But right now, that's not happening. And so you're wanting to stop a future problem from happening, which I understand, but you're outright ignoring what's already happening, what's already plaguing places like Chicago. So if you want to actually help people, maybe start there. Anyway, what do you guys think about this? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm pretty sure we're going to get a lot of both. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't already, please thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell, make sure that bell's clicked. You want to get updates. If not, follow me on social media and get all the updates there, and I will talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.